Hello. So, as is going to be exactly the title of this video, um, Todo slander has finally made it to one of the major JJK subreddits. So now, of course, I have to make a video talking about it and arguing against it. Todo being my favorite character in the show. So over here, we're on r slash jujutsufolk. Um, which I quite like visiting from time to time. And here, 3 hours ago, we see why is everyone suddenly slandering Todo? And of course, it's fun. So what I want to do right now is first I want to go over some of these slandering posts, the nature of the things they're saying. Then I suppose it would only be fair of me to provide and represent as fairly as I can the justification for the posts and the slander. And then, step 3, I'm going to argue against it. Going forward, I know I'm like talking as if this is some kind of serious topic. It's not even a little bit. Don't worry. But oh, okay, so there's a defense of him. You know, I was just here a second ago, and there were a lot of them. So, oh, okay, there. Just gonna put them all in their own tabs. I actually don't understand this image. I don't know if I'm not understanding the outlines of the shapes, what it's meant to represent right now. I'm not sure what the illustration is of. Obviously, he's watching some show that I assume, based on the nature of the Todo slander, this is some kind of like weird, creepy show. Here's another one. Third one. Of course, this is topical right here. That is an important one because I'm going to have to talk about this one for a little bit. And there are some like these that are just totally obvious joke posts. If I scroll down a little further, we'd also see one that sees, hey guys, did you know that the reason why Yuta didn't show up for the first half of the series was because he didn't want to get creeped out by Todo. And it's like, I'm not going to argue against that. It's a joke. But for some of these, I would be willing to say that these people are like just pretty much joking. Like, okay, I'm trying my absolute best to be like super precise right now. So, overarching, I will say all of this isn't serious whatsoever because I'm talking about an anime right now. And frankly, if I were to let other people's opinions on it genuinely affect my emotions, I think that would be a little silly. So, like, overall, truly none of this matters on the one hand. On the other hand, everyone does have their own opinions on the media they engage with. Everyone does have the characters that they like and dislike and the reasons why. So there are probably some people that genuinely dislike Toto's character in the series for their own reasons. And as I've gone on the record saying a couple times now, he is my favorite character. So even though, yes, I am trying to make it super clear that this isn't a serious topic, it's also not like I'm making a silly little YouTube video. I'm not doing anything serious, and I just want to talk about it because it's fun. That said, so some of these people are probably just joking and maybe don't actually have this view on Todo as a character, but then some people probably genuinely do. So we can see an easy overarching theme here. Um, People say that they like women for their personalities, actually, and then Toto goes insane and gets irate and violent. And there is hardly a lack of a basis for this because in the series there is that very infamous scene, Toto's introduction, where he asks Megami um, what Megami's type is, and and Megami responds, anyone with an unshakable character, but other than that, I don't really have a type. And Toto, deeming this boring and boredom being his worst nightmare, um, immediately starts beating the shit out of Megami. This one's also interesting to think about. So we have these three. Sign some because I have a regular non-preferred type. So I think these are all pretty largely in reference specifically to the Megami scene between Toto and Megami. So let's talk about that scene. We've gone over the posts like I wanted, and now let's go over the basis. Toto's introduction. Um, so the overarching, like the gist of what happens is what I said. Toto does his whole routine, asks Megami his type, and Megami gives that answer, and Toto gets upset. So this is one very easy way to interpret it. What? Wait, interpret. This is one very easy way to interpret it, but I personally disagree with that interpretation for a few reasons. Um, the thing is when I say that Toto is my favorite character, what I am not saying is that I would like him as a person if I met him in real life. I actually don't think we would get along particularly well, especially upon first meeting. Um, I think when he goes into his philosophical teacher mode, that's when I really do love him. But of course, he's an incredibly impersonable, um, very weird and off-putting upon meeting, you know, kind of a jackass. And crass though this may be, that is actually one of the reasons I went over this in a video I've already made. I think his complete disregard for social norms and therefore general unlikability to his peers, juxtaposed with how philosophical he actually is about the nature of jujutsu sorcery and his role in society. Um, I think that is what makes Toto genuinely really good autism representation, of a specific way in which autism can present itself, because that is, of course, a very broad thing. But anyways, so yeah, we have all these posts, but I have a very different interpretation of that scene, um, because Megami's exact words are not, "Yeah, I love women for their personalities." Megami says, "Well, I don't really have a type. I think as long as somebody has an unshakable character, that's all I really need." And the thing is I'm not going to fight anyone on liking personality more. However, specifically the answer Megami gave in that conversation is kind of a vague nothing answer. And I think that's pretty intentional because it's Megami we're talking about here. He is a very asocial guy. He definitely pretty openly did not want to be talking to Toto whatsoever. He was not enjoying the interaction. And then we get to the "what's your type" thing. I think the answer he gives here is basically just an attempt to diffuse the situation. This is kind of his way of saying he's not really engaging that much with the question. Because what does it mean to have an unshakable character? Sukuna has a pretty unshakable character, but I I would go so far as to say I do not think Megami would like Sukuna very much. It's a very vague answer that Megami gives. It's very vague and broad, and therefore, yes, a little boring. And that's the entire point of what Toto does when he's asking people what their type in women is. It's a test. because the first part of the test is this person going to be honest and actually just straight up tell me what their exact type is? Because that's a difficult thing to do in a social situation. You don't want to tell somebody this is exactly what I'm attracted to physically. It's weird, it's awkward. People don't like doing it, quite understandably. But therefore, Toto goes and asks the uncomfortable question, because that is what he's looking for in a person, is somebody who is brazenly honest and um, doesn't prioritize social norms and others' opinions. Um, Again, I'm sure it sounds like it. I'm not actually particularly defending that, because in real life, obviously, if somebody walked up to me and asked, and their first question was, "What's your type in women?" I would be reluctant to give a completely honest, straightforward answer too, and I would probably also give a pretty vague, nothing answer and get the shit beat out of me by Toto. We're not talking about real life. We're talking about the anime, and within the world of JJK, I actually think it's incredibly interesting what Toto does. And I actually think it's a really good introduction to his character and his values once we learn more about it. Now, obviously, there is a totally different angle at play here, which is the inherent misogyny. Can't ignore that. Because we're specifying women. Toto asks, "What's your type in women?" Of course, he learned that from Yuki, but we're talking about Toto. This is what he does. He chooses to continue doing this upon learning it. Blah 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 blah. But there is an extremely important detail here, which is that upon Megumi being weirded out by the question and reluctant to answer at first, Toto really wants him to answer, because he really wants to get to the bottom of whether or not Megumi is boring. And he actually specifies, "Hey, if you're into men, that's fine too, but what's your type?" So I really don't think it's a women thing. Nor do I think it's a particularly misogynist thing, because he phrases it as, "What kind of woman is your type?" I think that's the part that's left over from Yuki, because he then goes on to say, "If you're into men, that's fine too, but nonetheless, I need an answer to this question." Um, I think people kind of forget about that that it's completely fine with Toto if somebody's gay, but if they're gay and they like if Megami was gay but also had a boring type in men, then Toto would have gotten just as angry. On the other hand, if Megami was gay and he was like, "Yeah, I love short stacks," then him and Toto would have gotten along well. Um, so that's my defense against these posts, and that is my interpretation of the Megami Toto scene. I think it's extremely easy and not even unreasonable to have this interpretation. But I truly disagree with it. Um, I think the author kind of, especially in the whole thing where Toto goes out of his way to say, "If you're into men, that's fine too." I think the author was actually kind of putting some effort into showing that that wasn't the focal point of the conversation. Even here, like Toto on his way to slime someone because they have a regular non-perverted type. I don't think that's the case. It doesn't, because we also have to remember what he wants is for it to be interesting. Um, like, let's say Megami was being completely honest and he does fully value personality over looks. Um, Even then, the unshakable character answer is still a pretty vague, boring, nothing answer. If he valued personality over looks and was taking the question seriously, which again, pretty unreasonable expectation to put on Megami, but you get it. If he was truly if he truly did value personality over looks, but he was also taking the question seriously, then he could have given a much better explanation of what it is about personality that draws him. Because again, unshakable character, it's like, what do you do with that? What do you interpret from that? Unshakable how? Um, that's not even really a character trait. That kind of goes along with other traits. It's like you can be unshakably a villain, or you can be unshakably a hero. You can unshakably have integrity, or you can, you can unshakably have negative traits in the sense that you're never going to change them. You can unshakably be a complete coward even. So so it's not that so it's not that Toto asked what kind of woman's your type, and then Megami said I like personality, and then Toto beats the shit out of him. That's an oversimplification, a pretty massive oversimplification that kind of changes really both characters entirely. So that's what I have to say about this genre of Toto slander post. Of course, there's this one to think about. Hey Toto, why do you always hang out with Mei? You only hang out with people whose sexual preferences you respect, right? Do you respect unhealthy love for younger brothers? Now, this one I certainly have to think about. Firstly, I think this scene doesn't really mean anything because this is in a professional setting, but of course they go on to play ping pong together afterward. And I think this was probably gone over in the comments, but I don't think there's anything in the text to support that anybody has any idea about the nature of the relationship between Mei Mei and her brother. We never see anybody, nobody ever witnesses it, nor does she ever bring it up to anybody. Um, and I would at least slightly prefer to think that in this world there would be people who would take umbrage with it. And there are plenty of people more powerful than Mei Mei. I don't remember if she's a full fledged first grade. I think she's a grade one sorcerer, but there are plenty of people either more powerful than her or in positions of power above her who I like to think that it's not nothing that would have happened if everyone was completely aware that she was some kind of pedophile or whatever it is. Um, of course, that is my interpretation. There is also, there's no evidence that he knows. There's no evidence that he doesn't know. I don't think. I don't think it's brought up whatsoever. So this is kind of up to people. And I'm not just talking about Toto here. I'm talking about everyone. I truly don't think anyone in the JJK verse is completely aware of the nature of her relationship to her brother. Um, I don't know if it even ever gets brought up outside of the scenes in which we are witnessing it happen. Even then, it's not getting talked about. It's just happening. Also, and this is not in defense of Mei, this is for my own sanity. I really prefer to think that the author um, of the manga that went on to get adapted to my now favorite show, I prefer to think that he wouldn't have freely written that a character was an incestuous pedophile and completely got away with it, never had any consequences. I like to think that they didn't actually have sex and that the nature of their relationship is just weird and boundary crossing, but that they didn't literally have sex. I prefer to think that because otherwise I'll just be a little too grossed out. Like I said, that's not in defense of Mei Mei. It's weird and fucked up either way. But it's also like otherwise it's just a really unfortunate author's choice. But I'm kind of straying from the topic here. We're talking about the Toto slander. As I was saying, to my knowledge, and I'm actually confident in saying this about the anime because I know that for a fact about the anime, but to my knowledge overall, there's nothing to suggest that anybody has any idea what the hell she's got going on. Outwardly, what she always expresses is that she's a gold digger and she loves money and she loves getting money. So when presuming Toto asked her this question upon meeting her, when Toto asked her this question, more likely than not, because she's very open about the money thing, she probably said someone who's rich. And let's, think back to Toto's qualifications. It's a very honest answer by his perspective. It's an honest answer. She likes people with money because she likes money because she can buy things and be luxurious. And like I think a lot of us on some level think like that. We all like money. um, I I'm not defending gold diggers, people who get into relationships specifically because they will have more money and they're just being like, selfish about it, which is not the same thing as being a victim of financial abuse, even a little bit. So yeah, I'm not defending the gold digger thing, but if we think about his qualifications, it's a very honest and open answer that flagrantly goes against. I don't think I'm using. I think I said the wrong word just then. Never mind. Um, that completely goes against most social norms, um, but that she is nonetheless willing to say because it's the truth. Um, so based on the presumption that she simply gave the answer, "I'm a gold digger and I like money," I don't see why Toto wouldn't respect that. But again, some of this just now was my personal interpretation. Um, and of course, I'm being a tad bit biased. But that is what I think about that one. And then there's this one, which I honestly really have to think about. It's actually a very unfortunate thought. Sorry, what? Oh, geez, I didn't see this one. Why does now you get the hate? Come on. Anyways, so of course, this is completely hypothetical. I don't think those two characters literally ever interact or are even occupying the same space. But I will say, there's also not really anything to suggest that Toto is, actively a misogynist. He's also not specifically noted as being anti misogynist, which I think is what you should actually be. I don't think there's any neutral on a topic such as misogyny, but, anyways, I don't think there's truly all that much to suggest that he would have much respect or find interesting Naoya's answer. Because the thing with Naoya is that I think the whole point of Naoya's character is that he represents that there is a certain sadness and pity you can find in anybody who is born into deeply traditional and discriminatory ideals, even if they are the one that ostensibly benefits from it. Um, you certainly feel a lot less bad for the ones that benefit from whatever system they're born into. Um, Rightfully so, because they don't actually face the true extent of the abuse inherent. However, from an outside perspective, it is um, like, maybe I shouldn't say sad, but it's very unfortunate because he was born into the Zenin clan and he was obviously groomed into believing everything he believes. He was spoon fed all of that information from birth. And that's not me defending him whatsoever. It really isn't, because people still have personal responsibility. It's just a deeply unfortunate fact that people are born into societies, or in this case, families like that, and they learn all of these completely false ideals and they go on to internalize and exacerbate them. I think that's what the Zenin clan really represents as a whole. But Naoya is specifically what you see in the people that were born into things like that, but who don't face the discrimination and abuse. That's my reading on Naoya's character anyway. Um, he still sucks, and he still deserves the hate. He's a very purposefully hateable character. He is a, an antagonist. Um, but anyways, yeah, obviously this one is like pretty joking, pretty not serious. Totally hypothetical. No textual support needed even, but nonetheless, it was a neat one to ponder. I got to talk about this for at least a split second here. What the hell are people on about Naoya? Like, okay, here, thank you. Yes, I was hoping somebody would say this. People hate Naoya more than Sukuna because Sukuna is an anime villain. You know, you can run into people similar to Naoya in real life. It's not even particularly improbable. You're not really gonna run into a Sukuna. Like, I could probably go out onto a busy city street and pluck three men at random, and like one of them will, not be at Naoya's level, but probably hold some super unfortunate ideal similar to how he does. The point is, it's a huge issue. Misogyny is, and he's a raging misogynist, and that's the problem. So, like, of course, people hate him. He's reminiscent of a genuine problem in real life. Ooh, I didn't see this post. This is very interesting to think about. I mean, I wonder just how good of a counter Boogie Woogie is to projection swab. Anyways, yeah, got a little sidetracked there. Um, we all hate Naoya, to be clear. I hope at no point did I seem like I don't heavily dislike Naoya as a character. Um, yeah, that's the video. I was mindlessly scrolling on the subreddit today, and I just decided to sort by new on a whim, and I noticed that Naoya Slander has officially reached this subreddit, which it sure took forever. He has been my favorite character since I watched the anime at the like beginning of last month. I have not been a fan of this show for very long. Um, but yeah, he's been my favorite character, and randomly scrolling on the subreddit today was actually the very first time I've seen just about anyone slandering Todo. And we're having like people are getting in on it. I mean, this one's just funny. This is a meta joke. I'm not gonna. This one gave me a chuckle. And see this one. This one I gotta just totally disagree with. I think it's very much so the other way around. I have to confess, this one is also kind of true. You have to be really careful. I think there is a certain obligation to be very careful and precise, both when slandering a character, but also when responding. But that's also not an obligation that I could ever expect to like be enforced in any way. It's just kind of just something I think. But yeah, that's it. That's all from me. Just had to make a quick little video talking about that. Longer than I intended. So goodbye.